think I've ever said this before. We're finally doing this.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, it's normally through the Zoom and you're out there doing your thing, but it's great to sit down together.
Thank you for having me, but also the scale of your empire here is quite something.
Well, thank you. Yeah, most people when they come, they're thinking, and then they see what's going on. It's exciting.
Very impressive.
Yes, and I know you and Vinny, you guys have a very unique bond together. He loves being on the show.
I love him coming on. Vinny has an energy unlike anybody I think I've ever met in my life. And what I love is he just gives it back to everyone that gives it to him. There's no quarter given. But also he's an unpredictable guy. You can't box him in the way that people like to. They try and box him in as you're this and you're that.
Yeah.
And he'll often say, actually, I don't think that. I don't think he's an interesting character.
Yeah, made for TV,
Yes.
period. Made for TV. Every time I see these thumbnails and Vinny's pictures like that, or he's so animated, so you can always pick something. But Piers, I'm trying to see what angle to take with you. So there's a couple. I want to talk to you about, your relationship with the president. I want to talk to you about some of the stuff with Israel that you've hosted. So I think you hosted the first big one with Bassem Youssef came on, that one fiery 30-something million views. And then there was a back and forth. But also with what's going on with London. So right now in U.S., Mamdani just became the mayor of New York City, financial capital of the world. Prior to that, the financial capital of the world was London, right? So you guys had it for 100 years. We had it for 100 years. And, when Americans sometimes look at Europe and they look at EU, they're like, wow, look, London's lost. They've lost their identity. Look what's going on to them. And we had Dominic Tarczynski, who was here from Poland. He said, we'll never do what London is doing. We'll never do what EU is doing. What can New Yorkers, if you can give them advice to what to look for? You guys have Sadiq Khan. I think he's the first three-term mayor in London ever, right? Muslim guy himself. What happened to London after he came in that New Yorkers can expect?
It's interesting because I think there's been a slight mischaracterization of the comparison between Mamdani and Sadiq Khan. They're both Muslims, but Sadiq Khan is very much a establishment Labour figure in the UK. He's not a progressive woke left guy on many issues. Mamdani is full-on self-acclaimed socialist. That's not Sadiq Khan. Sadiq Khan, the parallel I said with Mamdani, he keeps winning elections because the opponents they put up against him have been universally useless.
This is Sadiq.
Yeah, so he's had a very easy run. And to be fair to him, he's won re-election twice. Mamdani was up against Cuomo, who I always felt was damaged goods. I felt if you're going to put a moderate up against him who actually was new and fresh and interesting, he probably could have done better, or she could have done better. So Mamdani had a bit of a clean run against a damaged guy, I felt. But there's no doubt this is a seismic moment for New York. I mean, it's the biggest city in America. It's one of the great capital cities of the world. It's, in many ways, the heart of capitalism itself. And here you've got a guy out there not just espousing a socialist philosophy, but it's seemingly utterly determined to try and deliver it. Now, I would say, look, Mr. Mamdani, this is all very well offering everybody everything for free, but there's a reason socialism hasn't worked anywhere in the world for any sustained period of time. At some point, somebody has to pay for this. So who's going to pay for all this? And the answer will be what's happened with the Labour government in the UK. The taxes aren't set by Sadiq. He has a tiny bit of power over local taxation. But the Labour government came in with a thumping majority just over a year ago. Massive, one of the biggest majorities of modern times, a real repudiation of years of very poor rule by the Conservative Party under a series of prime ministers. And they promised all sorts of things. Prosperity is coming, hope is coming, all these things. And it's been a complete disaster. And they're now about to unleash a budget in about 3 weeks' time, which they're already setting the stall by is going to be a total U-turn on all their pledges in the election campaign. They said they wouldn't raise income tax. They're going to. They said they wouldn't do this, wouldn't do that. They're going to do it all because they've realized they can't pay for all the promises they made. And I think this is what's going to happen in New York.
How ugly things going to be in New York?
Well, it's going to get very interesting politically, I think, because Mamdani is clearly the most charismatic figure the Democrats have had, really, for a long time, since Obama, you could argue.
Maybe even more charismatic than Obama, if you think about it.
He's more engaging, actually.
Right.
I think he's more engaging. And look, he's an Arsenal fan like me, a big Arsenal fan. So we have that in common. And it's not that I object to his aspirations. It's just that often with socialists, there's a complete disconnect between the aspiration and the ability to deliver. Now, if we come back in 2 years' time, let's be clear. If Mamdani within 2 years, manages to deliver on his socialist agenda in a way that is deemed to be successful and popular, massive transformative moment for the Democrats leading into the next general election. I don't think he can. I think the opposite will happen. I think he'll either, like a lot of these guys, once they get power, pivot more to the center ground, or he will try and force through these socialist policies. It won't work, and he will become the stick to beat the Democrats with leading into the next general election. So there's massively high stakes here because the Democrats have nobody else who has any real charisma. Nobody. And in fact, the most charismatic people on the left in America right now, you could argue, are Mamdani, AOC, and Bernie Sanders. So you've got a bunch of socialists dominating the news cycle for them.
Yeah, and what do you do with that, right, when you're seeing that part taking place? Because, on the other side, Nancy Pelosi stepping down, Newsom, you hear that voice coming up, and you're an interesting place because you do business in New York, you have a property, I believe, in L.A., you're in London, you're going back and forth, so you kind of are able to, compare all those different climates. But going back to UK, London, so we see the videos. We see Tommy Robinson. I had Tommy Robinson on. I know you guys have had your set of back and forth, and I've followed it over the years of what's happened. But what do you think about what Tommy says? Not his background, not any of the criminal stuff, not any of that stuff that maybe you guys have issues with. I'm not trying to do the personal stuff. What do you think about what Tommy is showing when he's going in the streets, having 100,000 people showing up? A lot of people in London finally are coming out saying the Overton window of immigration, not even people in London, the story came out last week, they're even more aggressively anti-immigration than America. They're like, we don't want any more of this. For you, somebody who is from there, what have you noticed the changes in London since Muslims started entering decades ago?
Well, I think the problem has been massively exaggerated. However, there is a rising problem. That's how I would categorize it myself. Tommy Robinson resonates with people because of two things, I think. One, he was absolutely right about the grooming gang scandal in the north of England. It was a horrendous scandal involving almost exclusively British Pakistani men abusing young white English girls. That was the scandal, and it was going on for years. It was horrific. These girls were being appallingly abused by a particular section of the community. But nobody dared say what that community was because they were trapped in woke ideology that you can't name a criminal if it doesn't suit the woke agenda. And so Tommy Robinson was one of those people that early on began calling this out, and he was right to do so, and he deserves credit for doing it. Mainstream media weren't completely oblivious. One guy on the Times actually exposed it originally and kept banging that drum. But many people in the establishment in the UK conspired to cover it up. They didn't want this. They thought it would be too much of a powder keg to say what actually happened, which is this was British Pakistani men abusing white English girls. That was it. And they should have been clear with what was going on. So Tommy Robinson deserves credit for that. Let's not get into his background. I have my issues about it. I have my issues about some of the sanitization of who he is when he comes on American shows, because he tends to, I think, be very disingenuous. But park all that. Why is he also gathering momentum now with his marches, which used to be, really a bunch of thugs running around, attacking police and so on. But it's morphed into a much bigger number of people. Many of them are completely peaceful. Many of them share his concerns about immigration failures, in terms of policy failures in the country for decades now. And again, on that specific, he's right. And the reason he's right is you can go back to really, it's interesting that I think the way this has played out. Tony Blair in the early 2000s opened the floodgates on immigration, but to Eastern Europe. And so we suddenly had a massive influx of people from Eastern Europe into the UK. And this was deemed to be a good thing, and then it became a thing that was slightly out of control. And then generally, immigration seemed to spiral out of control, both legal and illegal. We started getting this problem on the boats coming over from France. It's now up to 50, 60,000 people a year are coming in illegally on these small boats. No one appears to have any idea how to stop this happening. But more damagingly, 2 years ago, we had a net migration in the UK of legal migration of nearly 1 million people. Now, to put it in context, we only have just under 70 million people in the UK. You bring in 1 million people a year legally and add them to the already creaking infrastructure. We have the much vaunted national health system. The NHS was designed in the 50s for a population of 50 million. We now have a population of nearly 70 million. So comparative to America, we're a fifth of the size, but in comparison to where we were in the 50s, we are massively bigger population. The strain on all of our infrastructure, all our public services, has been getting worse and worse and worse in direct correlation to the size of our population. And that is what's been fueling a lot of the anger. A lot of people, add the pandemic, add the cost of living crisis, so add years of really tough times for a lot of people, particularly working class people in Britain. And they see a lot of people coming in either illegally or with the blessing of the state, with many dependents. And they see with the illegal migrants coming over on the southern border, they get put in 3-4-star hotels. They get treated way better than the way that many people are living their lives who are in the country illegally already. And it causes a lot of resentment. Then you add inevitably, when you get these kind of numbers coming in, that you're going to get migrants committing crimes. And when they do, this becomes a hugely inflammatory thing. So again, on that aspect of it all, Robinson is correct.
So if you look at this number, this is estimated Muslim population in UK by percentage from 83 till today. I'm sure you've seen this. 500,000 in 83, 1%. And then it cracked 1 million in 97, 14 years later, and then 2 million, and then 4 million, and then 4.5, some say 5 million today, 6-7% of the population. You have flirted with the concept of wanting to run for prime minister. I heard, whether you're joking or you're being serious, if there is a crazy personality that could pull it off, you probably have the personality to pull it off. But let's just say you do say, you know what, I'm going to get in there and I'm being hired as a, true, strategic, or I'm going to run for this. Do you think this growth, the way it's going right now, getting to 10, 20, 30%, do you think it is a good idea to keep allowing people to come in to combine the Islam way of thinking, what their ideas are, and coexist with the Western ideology?
Well, I think there are issues which are serious to be considered. For example, it's been reported there are as many as potentially 85 unofficial Sharia courts in the UK now, which are not operating under UK law. They're operating in their own law for their own communities. That clearly is not a good thing in a country like the UK. I would say, look, we have a very high Muslim population now, comparative percentage-wise to the United States. In fact, I think we're not far off in terms of total numbers to the whole of America. So we have a lot of Muslims who live in the UK. We've always been a very multicultural, very tolerant place. That's why people want to come and live there, a bit like America. I would say the vast majority, I've said this before and I say it again, the vast majority of Muslims living in the UK have assimilated perfectly well and live perfectly peaceful and lives which contribute to society. The problem is, I think, coming with the sheer volume of people coming in and the sheer volume coming in illegally as well, where, as you've had in the United States, people have actually no idea who these people really are, how radicalized they may be, what their plans may be when they get to the United Kingdom. And then you see the quite disturbing spectacle of protests, say, in London during the Israel-Hamas war, where people are brazenly supporting Hamas in these protests. And, Hamas is a prescribed terror group in the United Kingdom. That should be not happening.